Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. How are you today? Fine, perfect. Right. Today, inshallah, we are going to complete our talk about the indifference curve and the budget line, as well as the income and substitution effect. In the last class, we studied how to derive the indifference curves using the utility theory, or the total utility theory. And if you remember that, we assume that we have a rational consumer, and this consumer consumes different bundles of goods, different groups, different combinations that gives this, or give the consumer the same total utility. And we try to calculate the marginal rate of substitution. As you see here, according to our assumption, we have a consumer, and this consumer consumes different bundles of goods, banana and orange, and these combinations give him the same total utility. And we have derived the budget line, sorry, the indifference curve. Now, we said that the marginal rate of substitution equals delta qy over delta qx. And this is the slope of the indifference curve. The marginal rate of substitution is the absolute value of the change in equal to y over the change in x. It's always negative, but we ignore the sign here. So this is the slope of the indifference curve for the consumer. Okay? And we said that each point lies along this indifference curve give the consumer the same total benefits or the same total utility. Now, let us assume that each point A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all these points give the consumer the same total utility to TU equals 100 utils. Okay? We have to, what do you see here? A movement from A to B to C means that the consumer, when he wants to increase his consumption or to add one more unit, so X, this is the quantum X, the horizontal axis, and the QY, he has to give up or to sacrifice units of Y. Let us assume that the original point here, the consumer consumes 6 units of X and how many units of Y? 30 units of Y. He decided to, along B here, he added one more unit and he gave up how many units? 6 units. Adding one more unit, he gave up. What do you see? The sacrifice here is decreasing, which means that we have a decreasing in the marginal rate of substitution when we move along the indifference curve from left to right. Okay? How can we calculate the marginal rate of substitution along this curve, or the slope of indifference curve, which is really important to determine the consumer or the consumer equilibrium or the maximum utility that the consumer can obtain when he consumes different bundles of goods. Okay? 2, we have to calculate the slope. How can we calculate the slope? We have to draw a tangent line here. Let us assume that we are going to calculate the slope or the marginal rate of substitution along point A. Along point A, we have to draw a tangent line and a triangle. And we have to calculate the slope here, this triangle. Height over pace. Height over pace. This is the slope at this point. Here, let's go here. The marginal rate of substitution here. at this point, point A, a tangent line here, the slope equals delta qy over delta qx. What about this point here? What do you see? If we would like to calculate the slope at this point, point M, for instance. Draw a triangle here. What about here? What do you see? The marginal rate of substitution is decreasing as much as we go to right. When we move from left to right, what do you see? The marginal rate of substitution is decreasing because the slope at this point, point K, for instance, how can we calculate the slope at point K? We have to draw a tangent line and a triangle. Let's calculate here the slope. The slope or the marginal rate of substitution can be calculated as height over pace. مظبوط؟ شو اللي بصير؟ هذا الهاي is bigger than pace. As we go, the marginal rate of substitution is decreasing when we add more units of x. مظبوط؟ تمام. So, here as you see, the marginal rate of substitution at point A equals delta qy over delta qx equals. How can we calculate it? This is, suppose this is point A, qy1. So, at this point, this is the qx1. A movement from A to B, this is point B, so this is a qy2, qx2. To calculate the marginal rate of substitution in the absolute value, qy2 minus a qy1 over qx2 minus a qx1 in the absolute value. So the marginal rate of substitution here equals quantity y2, 26, minus 30, 26 minus 30 over qx2 minus qx1, 7 minus 6. In the absolute value, 4 minus 4 over 1 in the absolute value equals 4. A movement from point A to point C, for example, what do you see? MRS is decreasing. At this point, it becomes 0 maybe. The curve here is perfectly elastic and the slope equals 0. Okay? Right. Let's go to another point related to the indifference curve. As we mentioned before, that each point lies along the indifference curve gives the consumer the same total utility. At point B here, what is the combination that the consumer consumes? How many units of Y? 26 Y, and from X, 7. This bundle gives him 100 liters according to our assumption. What will happen if the consumer decided to increase his consumption of X? Let us assume that the consumer decided to add or to consume 10 units of X, and the same a quantity of Y, what will happen? His benefits or his utility, total utility, will increase. Okay? So, and here let us assume 13 with how many units? With 10, with 20. Definitely, this bundle will give him larger total utility. So, a movement to right or shiftward, rightward shifting in the indifference curve means that the consumer will obtain or will get larger total utility. Okay? The consumer will get, this is the indifference curve 1, IC1, IC2 gives him maybe 120 utils. A movement or full shifting or rightward shifting the indifference curve to right means that the IC3 gives larger total utility, 150. So the theory says that a rightward shifting in the indifference curve means that the consumer will get larger total utility, and vice versa. The leftward shifting in the indifference curve means that the consumer will get smaller total utility. Okay? تمام? Who has a problem? تمام. طيب, let's go to something else related to the consumer equilibrium or utility maximization, which is the budget line. Okay? The indifference curve represents the willingness or the benefits that the consumer desires to obtain when he consumes different bundles of goods. Let's go to another term, which is the budget line. The budget line represents the ability for the consumer to buy different combinations of goods. Let us assume that we have a consumer, a rational consumer, and he gets, or he is granted a salary of $100, and he tends to allocate all of his income to buy two products, X and Y. And let us assume that this is the consumer income. And the price per unit of X equals $2. And the price per unit of Y equals $1. If he decided, let's assume it's $30, and this consumer decided to buy only X, how many units of X can he buy? 15, yes. So the quantity purchased of X equals the consumer income over the price of X equals 30 over 2 equals 15 units of X. And how many units of Y can he buy? Zero, nothing, because he allocates all of his income to buy only X. So, and the quantity of Y equals 0. What will happen if he decided to buy only Y? If he decided to allocate, to purchase only Y, he can buy quantity Y equals income over a price of Y equals 30 over 1 equals 30. 30 units and 0 of X. Now, let us draw the budget line. So the budget line or the budget explain the ability of the consumer to buy different combinations of goods. Let's draw the budget line here. Okay, to draw the budget line, as you know that we have the vertical axis and the horizontal axis. In the vertical axis, this is the QY and the QX. Let's classify the 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Okay. 30, 35. This is the QY. As we mentioned before, that if the consumer decided to allocate his income to buy only X, he can buy how many units? 15 of X. And Y, 30. We have to connect these points. This is the budget line. The budget line represents or shows the ability for the consumer to buy different bundles of goods. The consumer can buy different combinations along the line, and he will be unable to buy outside the line. Inside, it's easy to buy different goods, different bundles of goods. Outside, it's unattainable point because due to the limited income and the available prices. He can buy maybe 30 units of Y and 0 from X, or maybe 20 units of Y and he can buy 5 units of X. Maybe he can buy 5 units of Y and maybe 12 units of X. This depends on any point along the budget line, means that the consumer can buy it without any problems. But where is the optimal point? Where is the best point? Where is the point that maximizes his utility and his benefits? This depends on the relationship between the budget line and different curves that will be discussed now. Okay? What will happen if the consumer or the consumer's income increases? His ability to buy will increase. Let us assume that the consumer income here was $30 and his income increases. Let's assume that the consumer income increases from $30 to $36. What will happen? This means that the consumer, the ability to buy will increase according to assumption that the price of X and the price of Y remains constant or remain constant, with the price of X remain constant 2 and the price of Y remains constant at 1. What will happen? The new quantity of X purchased will be the new income 36 over 2 equals 18, and the quantity of Y equals new income 36 over 1 equals 36. The budget line will shift right, 36 and 18. Parallel to the previous one. Parallel بشكل موازي. We have a fold shifting of the budget line to right. This means that his ability to buy will increase. Okay? If we calculated the slope here, we will see it the same. How much is how much is the slope here? The slope of the budget line 1 and the budget line 2. Let's calculate the slope of the budget line 1. The slope here equals ظل الزاوية هذا مظبوط height over base for the first triangle. How much is it? 30 over 15. The slope of budget line 1 equals height over base 30 over 15, the absolute value. It's a negative slope, since you know it's a negative slope, because when he decided or decides to increase his consumption of X, he has to give up more units of Y. Okay, equals minus 2, the absolute minus 2 or 2 here. What about the slope of the budget line 2? The same slope of budget line 2 equals, how do you see? 36 over 80. Yes, 80. 36 over 18 equals 2 as well. So, increasing income means that the consumer can buy more units of X and Y with assumption of the price remain constant. The price of X and the price of Y remains constant. The slope remains constant. Okay, we have a full movement or a full shifting of the budget line from to right, rightward shifting with the budget line, and the opposite case. If the consumer's income and the prices of X and Y remain constant, the consumer income, when the consumer's income decline, we will see a leftward shifting in the budget line. Means the ability or the capacity of the consumer to buy will decline parallel to the original budget line. Okay? Right. What will happen to if the price of X decline and other variable or ceteris paribus, other variables, the price of Y remains constant and the consumer income remains constant, what will happen to the budget line? Let's check the point here. Now let us assume that we have the original budget line, which is as follows. This is the original budget line, quantity X, quantity Y. And this is the original budget line, 13 or 30 with 15. This is 15 and 30. The given data shows that the consumer income equals $30 and the price per unit of X equals 2, price per unit of Y equals 1. Now, let us assume that the price of X goes down or went down. This is the original situation. And the new situation, the consumer income remains constant at 30, and the price of X equals 1 has declined, and the price of Y remains constant at 1. What will happen to the budget line? Let us check what will happen to the budget line here. To derive the new, or to determine, or to draw the new budget line, we have to calculate the exact quantity of X and Y, the new quantity of X of Y, quantity of X and the quantity of Y that the consumer can buy according to the new changes in the price of X. So the new quantity of X equals I over the price of X, a new. All of these data are new here. So I 30 over 1 equals 30. Quantity of Y, new. I over PY equals 30 over 1 equals 30. That's it. So, what will happen here? The quantity of Y remains constant at 30, and quantity of X increases to 30. Quantity of X, 30. If the price of X increased, and the price of Y remains constant, the consumer income remains constant, we will see a new budget line here. What will happen if the price of Y let us have the following changes. A new I remains constant, sorry. And the price of X remains constant at 2. And the price of Y, let us assume that the price of Y increased to 5. And this is the original situation, the original budget line. What will happen here? In new QX, the same. There are no changes. QX, I 30 over 2 equals 15. But we have a changes. We have a change in the quantity of Y, which becomes smaller. 30 over 5 equals 6. So, a Q, the quantity purchase of X remains constant, but the quantity of Y decreased. So this is the new budget line. What do you see? We have a movement right or left toward one product. Okay? Either out or in. Okay? If the price of Y, as you see here, the price of Y goes up, this means that the consumer becomes unable or became unable to buy this product, and so he decided to decrease his consumption of Y. The same as the change in the price of X, so we have changes in the location or the slope of the budget line. When the consumer income, it change or it has some changes in the consumer income, the location of the budget line changed. When the consumer's income increased, the location of the budget line changed, but we had the same slope, if you remember. But when the price of one product it changed, and ceteris paribus, other variables remain constant, we have some changes in the slope of the budget line. We have change in the slope of the budget line. How much is the slope, the previous slope? It was 2. Now, as the price of Y increases, it becomes 6 over 15, declining the slope, as you see. Okay? Right. Let's go to something else. Okay, as you see in this graph, the price of X equals 2, price of Y equals 1, and the budget or the consumer's income increased to 40. As you see, this is the original budget line. This is PL1. What do you see? We have a full movement or a full rightward shifting in the budget line parallel to the previous one. The slope here equals 30 over 15 equals 2. 40 over 20 equals 2 as well. So when the consumer's income increases, the budget line shifts right, and there are no changes in the slope of the budget line. Okay? But here, let's come back or go to this graph. As you see, where's the original? This is PL1. As the price of X goes down from P2 to P1, the price of X, and the budget remains constant, as well as the price of Y remains constant, we have a movement with a change in the slope of the budget line. Okay? Let's go to the optimum point for the purchasing, or the point that we advise the consumer to buy. Okay? The optimum point let's have the following graph. This is the budget line, quantum Y and quantum X. This is the budget line, and let us assume that we have many indifference curves. This is the indifference curve 1, IC1 and IC2. Let us assume that the total utility obtained under the indifference curve equals 100, and indifference curve 2 equals 150, and indifference curve 3 equals 200. And let us assume the following points. Point A, B, and C, D. As we mentioned before, that each point lies along the indifference curve, IC1 gives the consumer the same benefits, the same total utility. So, point A gives the consumer 100 units as C. A equals C equals M, because they lie along the same indifference curve. What about point B? B gives larger benefits for the consumer because it gives him 150 utils. D gives larger total utility, as we mentioned before, that a rightward shifting in the indifference curve gives, or yes, means that the consumer obtained larger total benefits or larger total utility. Okay? What about the points lying along the budget line? At point A, the consumer spends how many? Income, the spending equals 30, and the price of X equals 2, price of Y equals 1. These are the main assumptions here. At point A, how much is the consumer spending? 30, because according to our assumption that the consumer spends all of his income to buy two products, X and Y. At point A, he spends $30. At point B, because it lies along the same budget line, this means that he spends also 30. At point C, he spends only also 30. تمام؟ طيب. Let's do a comparison between point A and point B. At point A, the consumer spends $30 and gets 100 units. spends the same amount and gets larger total benefits, total utility. مظبوط؟ So which is better? Point A or point B? B. B is better than A. What about B and C?
B is better.
B, along B, we spend 30 units, is $30 and get 150. At C, we spend the same amount and gets smaller total utility, 100. So B is better than C. What about D? It's unattainable point because we are unable to reach it according to the current income or the current prices. How can we move to point C? Either by increasing the consumer income, or we have a cheaper prices X and less prices X, less prices Y, we can move to this point. But here we can say that point B is the optimum point, and we advise the consumer to buy at this point. So this point is the equilibrium point. بنسميها the equilibrium point. تمام؟ طيب. At this point, the slope of the budget line, how can we measure the slope here? هاي السلوب equals the slope of indifference curve. صح؟ مظبوط؟ هذا هيك slope of the budget line equals the slope of the budget line. The optimal point occurs when there is a tangency between the budget line and indifference curve. Not a cross, because here we have a cross. The slope of indifference curve is bigger than the slope of the budget line. Here we have a cross. The slope of budget line is bigger than the slope of indifference curve. But here we have the equilibrium point, the most efficient point, the point that maximizes the total utility for the consumer. Okay? Let's go to something else. As we mentioned before, if the consumer's income increases, the budget line shifts to right. And let us assume this is the first point, point A. This is the optimum point for the consumer under the limited budget, which is 30 maybe, $30. Now, as the consumer's income increases, we have to move to budget line 2. At this point, we have a new equilibrium point, a new optimum point. As the consumer's income increases, we have shift in the budget lines, and we have a shifting in the indifference curve as well, because the total, when the consumer's income increases, the total benefits obtained will increase as well. So we have another equilibrium point. If we connect these points together, we will reach to the income consumption curve. Income consumption curve, as you see here. Which is angle curve. Angle curve. As you see here in this example or in this graph, point A, B, C. This is the angle curve. In general, what will happen to the quantity purchase of X when income increases? Sorry?
Again.
Who said that? No. It depends on the type of the product. Either to us, maybe if the product is normal. What the frozen meat? If the consumer's income increases, the demand for frozen meat will decline. This is an inferior good. So,
It depends on the type of
exactly, definitely, yeah. Because as the consumer's income increases, we have to distinguish between two products, the normal goods and inferior goods. So it's not always increases when the income increases. So here, as the consumer's income increases, the consumption does not increase always, because this relies on or depends on the type of the product. If the product, let us assume that quantity of X or X is normal good. X, so the demand or the quantity demanded of X will increase. Like the demand for fresh meat. This leads to increasing the quantity of X, quantity demanded of X. But for the inferior goods, the quantity of X goes down. So, angle curve is not always upward sloping. Here, angle curve has an upward sloping. But sometimes you will find it with a negative slope. Here you see. This is the angle curve. Yes.
When we talk about normal goods,
Yes.
the demand increases or it remains the same when the prices increase?
Well, no, I'm talking about the change in income. I'm not talking about the prices here. As the consumer's income goes up, the demand for normal goods will increase, and the demand for inferior goods goes down. What do you see here? This is the angle curve, or the income consumption curve, when the product is inferior. As the consumer income increases, the budget line shifts right. We have a new equilibrium point. This is the original equilibrium point, point A, but where is the new equilibrium point if the good is inferior? No. The quantity of X, this is the original quantity of X that we advise the consumer to buy. Let us assume it was 10 units. Okay? Now, the consumer income increases and the good is inferior. So the quantity of X goes down. How? Where's the point will be? It's impossible to determine the point here, because if we assume the point that will be here, and we put this line, an income consumption line, quantity of X increases. It's impossible here, because we are talking about an inferior good. So the optimal point, or the best point, or the best location for the optimal point on the graph will be here, which represents what? A decreasing in the consumption. The consumption of X, QX, was 10 units, and there is a decreasing in the quantity purchased of X. Okay? So what do you see? The angle curve here is, or the income consumption curve, has a negative slope. Before that, in the previous case, the last case here, it has a positive slope, upward sloping. What? So, angle curve in this graph is an upward sloping here for the normal goods. But in the second case, it is negative slope. مظبوط؟ طيب so the angle curve here represents the relationship between the consumer's income and the quantity purchased of X, or the demand for X income and consumption of X. The quantity of X. It might be positive, هذا الانكم consumption ICC. ICC. Income consumption curve or angle curve when the product is normal. The normal goods. As income goes up, the consumption goes up as well. What about the inferior goods? The opposite case. The opposite case, this is the angle curve, or ICC. Income consumption here has a negative slope. As the consumer's income goes up, the quantity, the consumption goes down, or the quantity demanded X goes down. Okay? Who has a problem so far? But here, as you see, we determined the effect of income on the budget line and the benefits or the total utility. تمام؟ ما لغينا. تمام؟ طيب. Let's go to here, as you see, this is the angle curve when the demand, or when we have a normal good. It has an upward sloping, and this is for the normal goods and for inferior goods. This is the angle curve, okay? Let's go to the price consumption curve. As we mentioned before, that when the price of X goes down, let us assume this is the original situation. This is the original budget line, 13, 15, and this is the equilibrium point. يعطيكم العافية. شكرا. المرة الجاية نكمل.